Greetings, humans, Daleks, Time Lords, and hybrids. You're listening to Exterminating Doctor Who.
This is the show that takes Doctor Who's most talked about episodes to debate if they're really as good or as bad as their reputations.
With your hosts, Aidan Gula.
And me, George Ellis.
And in today's episode, we are talking about Hellbent with Daniel McPeake.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.
It wasn't my choice.
We're really going to be at each other's throats right now.
Yes.
It is. It's nice to have you. It's nice to have you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Because we're going to dip our toes back into our Series 1 format of taking an episode that's seen as quite bad and saying, does it need a second chance? And I've spoken to you many times about how your favourite series is Series 9. So I thought, you know what? I wonder what your opinions are on Hellbent. So I'm about to find out. But before we do, as we do with all our guests, I shall ask you, Daniel, what is your Doctor... I mean, we've had this conversation before, but you can just air it to the world now. What is your Doctor Who profile? How did you get into Doctor Who? Who's your favourite Doctor? I know all this information already, but tell us all.
To cut a long story short, I've known it since I was like 5 or 4 when it first came back with the revival, but I only properly got into it with Series 3.
Yeah,
that's when the weekly routine came in of watching it every single Saturday night. But I've just always loved it. And my favourite Doctor, Capaldi. It's got to be like, I don't know what your opinions are, but like Capaldi is the is the
Capaldi's very good. I really like Capaldi.
We've been doing a tally along these guest specials about who says Tennant or Capaldi more.
It's just no. I doubt there's any other options apart from Tennant or Capaldi, but yeah,
pretty.
Yeah,
well, no,
actually
we've had so far. I'm winning 2-1 because Capaldi is in the lead, but the other one that we have...
I mean, they're your guests. You've been picking the guests.
Yes, but that's not the point. They are my friends, essentially. So I'm like, oh, come on, join the podcast. But we've had 2 for Capaldi, 1 for Tennant, and 1 for Eccleston so far. So
all right,
that's how we're currently...
Eccleston's basically Tennant, though, so I kind of like... I'm
kidding. Interesting.
I really do like Capaldi. I mean, recently I rewatched the whole... actually watched the whole Capaldi era, and I love it. It's brilliant, actually. There are some
brilliantly.
I think when Capaldi was first the Doctor, I did enjoy what he was doing, but a part of me was still kind of latched onto David Tennant, and kind of everything since David Tennant when it first started, I was always latched onto that idea. But since we're doing the podcast, I've rewatched a lot of eras I fell off loving, and I've realized that they are quite good, and there's something about them, and Capaldi's really, really strong. Not as good as Tennant, and I'm able to justify my belief there, but I think Capaldi is probably my second favorite Doctor because he's just got such a watchable presence, and he is just every Doctor in one, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I believe that, Aidan, and well, to be fair, Missy is better than Capaldi. Just saying, I love Missy so much.
Missy is better than Capaldi.
Yeah,
sure. I mean, she is amazing,
and not in this episode. So that's irrelevant. This week we're talking about Hellbent, a very I think it's still quite a controversial and contentious episode. People are still unsure whether they like it or not. So I think my opinion is just kind of fluctuates over the years, and I think my opinion of the episode kind of is represented by how the episode kind of progresses, in that I really like it when it starts, and then it kind of goes really downhill, then it comes up again, then it goes downhill again. That's how I feel. And I think over time I've been like, do I like this? No, I don't. Do I? No, I don't. Maybe. And I think that's kind of how I've gone along. So as this was essentially your choice, Daniel, what are your general thoughts on this episode?
Well, so many 9 pages of thoughts, actually.
Yes.
When it first came out, I was one of the people who were like, oh, that was just a bit meh. I didn't really think much of it, and I thought it was a bit of a meh ending to Clara's time on the show. But now I've watched it roughly 9 more times after it's came out, and it's just slowly grown on me, and I have a lot of appreciation for it, because I think, I know we're probably going to talk about this later, but so many people complain that Clara should have just stayed dead and Face the Raven, but I agreed with that initially, but now I'm like, wait, no, it's the perfect ending for 12 and Clara to have. So I just think,
is it the perfect ending?
I'll get into it more.
Like, is it the perfect ending?
I think it's close enough to perfect, but I just because it's such intimate and personal story between the two of them, and I just think it's really nice to watch that relationship, which was essentially just completely toxic and dangerous, realize that and go their separate ways. And I think that was a really poetic ending.
Yeah, after shooting someone. And
that's the point, though.
It's always good to come to the realization that you're doing something wrong after going too far. Like after you've got like, ugh.
No, it's something. I think my general, because when we were talking about this the other day, Daniel, you said that a lot of people complain that it's the Doctor acting out of character, but that's the point. So that's kind of been what was in my mind when I was watching it, and I thought, you know what, some of that I can be like, I kind of like some of this. Then there are two things. Then there, well, not two things. That was not the right thing to say. There are some things where I think there are some lines that probably shouldn't be crossed with the Doctor, and I think this episode does cross some of them. So I think when he's acting out of character up until that point, I could be like, I like this. This is good. This kind of makes sense. And then as soon as, like George said, when he shoots somebody, he murders somebody right there and then, because he's like George
essentially,
in the End of Time, he has this whole hissy fit about, you know, it is like dying. So then suddenly he's like, bam, you're dead. I'm like,
it's the man flu.
Just shot somebody and
like.
Yeah, and like you have just shot and murdered somebody there. That is a line we shouldn't cross with the Doctor. So that's when I'm like, no, don't like that.
The dude, that's my main, like that's my, like not my main problem, but that's like the biggest problem for me in this episode is the fact this is the Doctor, the man who never would. But this is the episode where the man who never would. And it's like, what? Why have you? It's so. It's not just the Doctor being out of character that moment. It is the Doctor doing something he categorically stated he never would, and in situations where I would say I'd be okay with him breaking that rule, he still doesn't. You know, that someone kills his daughter, for crying out loud, and he's like, I won't kill you, but he's just trying to run away with Clara, and he's still gonna shoot someone. And it's still, I find that to be, there's one extreme where he doesn't do something and it would be more justifiable than this other extreme where he does do it. And it's like, you don't need to be killing this dude here. And what Aidan said about the regeneration, the Doctor has explained how regeneration is like dying. You have all the memories and all that kind of thing, but it's a different person. And I find that fascinating. But in this episode, he brushes it off as it's just the man flu. And that's just categorically not the case. And it feels like the Doctor it's either bad writing or it's the Doctor trying to dismiss him being an idiot in this case. He knows he's doing something terribly wrong and he's trying to either convince Clara or convince himself. And that I find extraordinarily selfish, no matter which way you spin it. And I just find that crux of the episode where I think that is the turning point for me. I love the episode. I really think it's brilliant right up until that moment. That happens and it's such a drastic change, and it's something which isn't just out of character, as I've said. It's something which is just fundamentally immoral and switches everything. And then from then on forward, it's just me sitting there thinking, everyone else here is telling you shouldn't be doing this, and I agree with every other person apart from the one person in every episode of Doctor Who where I'm thinking is the hero. And it's like, what's happened here?
Yeah, because I think that thing you said about like when he's had that moment to shoot people before, and it would have been more justifiable. Something I've compared two things in this episode to actually things from the Fifth Doctor era of all things. And there's an episode with the Fifth Doctor when he points a gun at Davros and he says, "I'm not here as your prisoner. I'm here as your executioner." And he's gonna shoot Davros, and he realizes, no, I can't do that because I'm the Doctor and I don't shoot people. And I think, if you had shot Davros, I'd have been like, fair enough, man. So when he just shoots the Time Lord General, who you can see he actually has some quite respect for, and even though he doesn't like many of the High Council Time Lords, he kind of has a bit of a repertoire with the General. So I think I'm like, nah, you wouldn't really kill him, would you?
I've never seen that episode from the Fifth Doctor, but it feels similar to the Witch's Familiar, where like he has the opportunity to keep him living a little bit longer so we can see the sunrise one last time. So I'm not sure if that's in the same series where he literally shoots someone and quote. Okay, the definition of murder is very different between us here, because and not that I'm siding with it, but like
No.
it, like he didn't kill General.
No,
Like they're still here. They were.
But we've
just
seen
depends on
what it does to someone. We've seen how the Doctor's literally weeping at the fact I'm gonna die soon, all that kind of thing. We've seen what it does, and it's not like the General is his first regeneration. That's his last one. Used up
near
there.
to last. That was
Near to last, but you get what I'm saying. It's like that's quite a
10th.
yeah. He's got 2 left after that, hasn't he? And then, so
that's it.
So he's not technically, he in Time Lord terms, he hasn't murdered him, but that incarnation of the General, Ken Bones, is dead, and he wouldn't have.
And it's
been
a waste of a regeneration
for the
as well.
Doctor. Yeah,
a regeneration is like a final second, like a final chance. Like there's no other solution here. I need to be saved, and it's like got saved by regenerating. Instead, it's this. I'm just going to waste one because I need to escape. When I could have shot you in the leg, but these guns apparently only murder. Sorry.
Or just shot it. I thought just, Doctor Who, like,
shoot the
effects,
console,
shoot
break
the control panel, big explosion, all confusion, run out. That's what I thought. But
just hit him with the gun. You don't have to. There are so many options here instead of just bang. Like it's.
I think, well, in an episode titled Hellbent, like, and contextually, and like, I know he didn't fully live through this, but 4.5 billion years of memories could,
send you a bit mad. Yes.
Yeah. No, I get that.
At the end, and like, I'll go into. I have about 7 points about why Clara is more special than every other companion on the show.
Oh, good God!
But like, she's not even my favorite companion, but like, she's still do you know how people are like, oh, she's different? She is.
Well,
right, go on then.
Can
I want to
throw Donna
now,
into
then.
the mix here?
Or Sarah Jane.
I'm sorry. Did Donna jump into his timeline and has been saving him throughout his entire life
on purpose? I think like Clara's a bit. Yeah, but that's the chosen one aspect, which. Doesn't matter. Explain why.
I want to hear this because I'm always like, you know what, Sarah Jane is the pinnacle of companions, and nobody will ever beat her. So,
but like, she's one of my favorite companions. Bill, I would say, is my top companion. But in the context of the show, I just think that like the Doctor sees her, aside from like the Master, as the most similar or like most important figure in their lives. So I feel like shooting someone and making them regenerate is a very bad thing to do, but he would just do absolutely anything to save this character. And hold on, let me
I think he'd do the same, if not more, for Rose at the very least, because the relationship they have.
Could.
But he doesn't, because he knows he can't break the rules of time, and that's something he learns, and he is taught, and he breaks that rule at some point. He does with Time Lord Victorious, and he realizes this is a bad idea, but still he does kind of still save people there, but there are still consequences for his actions. Whereas here, he breaks these rules, and yes, in the end he decides, I'm gonna not, right, that's enough, stop being an idiot. But then there are no real consequences, which is like, you've broken the rules here, and the consequence is Clara now gets to go free, and you've just forgotten her. That's not a huge consequence because she's fine.
And he gets his memories back eventually anyway.
Exactly.
That's about a time.
It's no. He knows not to break the rules, and with a companion, I think he the same level of feelings he's got towards that companion, he still decides not to break those rules because he knows the consequences. And in this case, he chooses it's no. Stop it.
Well, I agree to some level. But like, comparing them to other, like, if you compare it to like the 10th Doctor, I was like, yeah, sure, I don't think the 10th Doctor would do that. But I feel like the 12th Doctor is established to be a lot like incredibly selfish in comparison to other Doctors and stuff. Like, so when I rewatched series 9 in anticipation of this, like in The Girl Who Died, when a Shielder dies, or like is abducted or whatever, the doctor's like, I just lost someone who mattered to me. And then there was like, yeah, so did Ashilda's dad, and he just doesn't care. And throughout the series and also series 8, he just doesn't really care about anyone but Clara. And I feel like
in that
is
episode,
different to...
there's a moment where the doctor realizes he's the doctor and he saves people. So even then,
but he hadn't gone through 4.5 billion years worth of punching.
If I see the doctor develop into, if I see him have this character development where he's being selfish, but then he realizes I need to save people because I chose this face. If he has that, he's developed into the saving people doctor. I need him to be saving people. I can't have him have this character development, hop back because of whatever reason. Yes, okay, he's been there in 14 billion years and he saves people, but that's not saving someone. He knows for a fact that isn't. And it's don't have a point A to point B development and then have him go, actually, I want to be over here again.
My thing with it is like you said about people thinking the Face the Raven death is better. I do think it's better because Clara's whole thing, especially like as she progressed, was a lot about her becoming too much like the Doctor. And she was like in Flatline when she says, I'm the Doctor, and the Doctor's like, don't you dare. It was all about her becoming too close to the Doctor and how that would affect her life and put her in danger. So when she is in Face the Raven and she goes, you know what, give me your tattoo. I'll take this on, when she's trying to be all bravado, and that kills her. I think that's a perfect way for her to be like Icarus. She flew to whatever the thing is,
close to the sun.
She was so close. I was going to say flame, then I thought, no, it's not flame, it's something else. So I'm just going to give up on this.
Icarus
comparison.
was really close to a candle. It just
he went up. That's what I thought. I shouldn't have started this comparison, but anyway, I like that end for her. In the Doctor in this episode, when he says, I want to speak to somebody, and he takes her out in the extraction chamber thing, I think I'm with it there, because I feel like because the Doctor didn't really get a good goodbye to Clara, and I feel like if he was just taking her out to say goodbye properly, I'd be fine with you.
Yeah, and I'd probably cry my eyes out. I probably would.
Yeah, which is why I like the bit when they're in the cloisters and she's like saying, how long were you?
That's my favorite bit of the episode. That bit.
I do really like that scene. It's like, well, how long were you in there? And he's like, 4.5 billion years. And she's like, what? Why would you do that? And even she's like, why would you do that for me? So I like that. I do like that scene. It's when he just starts to save her, I think. Yes, you can make the argument that Clara is more special to him because, yes, she went through his entire timeline and saved him over and over and over again. Though, technically, we only saw her save each Doctor once, but whatever.
And it's one of the weirdest bits of TV I've ever seen where they just superimposed and it's like,
Yeah, especially when you watch Classic Who and you watch the episode that it's actually from. I've just done the Tom Baker era, and there is the bit when he walks up the corridor, and I was like watching that going, wait, isn't this the shot where Clara just appears in the background? And that was really weird. But anyway, I can understand that, and I can understand them being like, this is my current best friend, but I just feel like there's never been another companion before. Even when Sarah Jane left, though technically the Doctor left Sarah Jane, he's never gone on some crazy tangent. Like, yes, Tennant did go off on Time Lord Victorious, but that wasn't really a direct result of Donna. That was just kind of just him going a bit insane, really. And I just feel like it's too much of like, well, why Clara? Why is she the one where you're like, sod the universe? Like, again, I said I had another Fifth Doctor comparison. When the companion Adric dies, even though, yes, Adric is continually voted the worst companion of all time, but when he dies,
dude.
when he dies, because his character is basically like he's a maths genius, and he's like, I can work this thing out. So he's on a ship working something out, and then the ship crashes.
Just give the dude a calculator.
And then the credits end with no music because it's supposed to be like, oh, Adric's dead, but all the fans were actually like, thank God for that. But anyway, in that scene, the other two companions, Tegan and Nyssa, they say, can't we go back in time? Go back and save Adric. Just go back to before the ship crashed, pick him up and take him out. And the Doctor goes, no, we can't do that. Do you want to go back on your own timeline? That's not possible. It will destroy the universe. Blah, blah, blah. Time travel, mumbo jumbo. And I think like, you look at that and then you look at this one where the same thing has happened. And he's like, you know what? Sod that. And I'm going to go and do exactly what I said I couldn't do. And I just think that's one of the things I'm like, you can't go back on your own timeline. And how many times have we established fixed points in time? And it's just,
I think sometimes when I try and discuss a point about a character doing something they shouldn't do, sometimes people say, "Oh, you shouldn't use it to base it off their previous examples because of this. There's now new context," and that's something which annoys me because it's like it's the same character they've had character development, but I can understand that thing because it is a 14 billion years. But the difference is here we have fundamental laws of time, and they're being broken. That's not up for contention. There's no, let's discuss, could you go back in your own timeline? You can't. That's a fixed, like, it's just, you can't change it. It's fixed and it has ripple effects at the very least. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, that's, no matter what,
it's
which
too
way
careless. It's too careless.
Yeah.
Sci-fi.
Even if I don't bring in the fact that he's doing something he wouldn't do, it is just doing something that you shouldn't do, and if he does, the consequences should be something so drastic. I don't understand why they're allowed to, like, why could the Doctor do this thing which is said to have these huge consequences, yet the consequence is nothing? It is it is breaking its own rules and then saying it's okay to break your own rules because there's the consequence. If the Doctor will forget, then remember, and that's not a consequence. The consequence for Donna ever remembering anything is her mind will burn. That's a consequence. That's what happens, and it's just such a annoying. It's annoying. I don't like it.
What do you think of? Because one of the main themes I would say of series 9 is just the whole ripple effect type of thing, where, like, say, in The Magician's Apprentice, he like introduces the word dude several centuries early, which is a minor thing. Then it gets to like before the flood, and he's like, I'm gonna, like, I bet, what is it? He says a ghastly future is better than no future at all. Then it gets to the girl who died, and he saves a shielder. So that's like an ongoing thing. So do you think? What do you think of that arc for the Doctor? Because I feel like it's a gradual increase where he goes a bit mad with power.
Yeah, I get you. Well, the gradual increase is an interesting thing, and I think him developing that's quite interesting. He's going mad with power, and we've seen him do that before.
I don't mean to interrupt, but like I only think he properly goes mad with power when he's overthrown Rassilon as well, when he ascends to the highest point of Gallifrey. Like,
I'm with you.
Like, I've got the power now, I can do what I want. And it's like the snowballing effect of the ripple effect reaches its climax at that moment.
Well, seeing it develop, that's interesting. And then seeing, as you've said, he goes a bit mad there. But it falls back to him needing a consequence to me, really, because you have this person who's, I can do this thing. Nothing really went wrong, but I saved someone. I can do this thing. Oh, I can do a bit more. And okay, that's quite interesting. He's pushing the boundaries a bit. But then at this point, he pushes it so far, I think there should be a major pushback because every action has equal and opposite reaction. I want that. And I think he deserves that, because then at this point, it is him going, I'm going to go too far because I feel like I can, and I need something to push him back and say, you can't, like with Time Lord Victorious. I was about to say Timeless Child. So sorry. Let's not
go into that today.
Time Lord Victorious, he goes too far and there's that pushback. He does, there is, but it's consequence, which is, I find Time Lord Victorious so wonderful. The consequence is two things. He breaks his own rules, and that means he can actually save some people who shouldn't be saved. But that means this death happens. It's that balance. It's such a wonderful telling, rather than just being, there's this, you've done this naughty thing, you get punished. It's, you've done this naughty thing, and it's branched into this completely plausible situation where you've saved these people, but now this person has killed themselves, and it's such a, I like that.
And that also, I think with Time Lord Victorious, well, because then that also is what causes him to regenerate in the end, anyway. Because at the end of time, it's him going too far, so that kills him. That is what ends him. I think with the Doctor going too far here, because it's mid-era, it kind of like, by next series, it's like, I'm with Bill now, and it's all happy and dandy, and it's kind of like it didn't really amount to anything. And I think if you are going to, I don't like him breaking his own rules and going too far. But if you are going to do that, you kind of want to have a lasting effect rather than just, oh, I've forgotten you now. Anyway, I'm in a diner. All right, bye.
What would you want the consequences to be? Like,
I don't know.
Like,
I think it would have to be just. It would have to be something like if he did forget Clara, he can't ever remember her.
Yeah.
At the very
I
least.
think, I know, like the scene in Twice Upon a Time was like it made me cry my eyes out, and I thought it was good. But it like any other bit where a doctor's regenerating and they shoehorn in a companion cameo, it was just like that.
Yeah.
But like it, like yeah, I do.
I think that's just the one. I wouldn't want anything more, because you could go into a whole like, well, then let's have the next series where the whole universe is falling apart. He's got to try and put it all back together. You could say something like that, and I'm like, I'm not bothered about that because I'm fine with the series 10 we got. But I think it would just something simple where he just can't ever remember Clara again. I'd be like, there you are. You went too far. You did all this for Clara, and that's it. You can't remember her. That's it. I'd be fine with that, and it would maybe make me a bit let this sit easier on me.
Yeah. I wish he didn't even do this in the first place, so I'm not having to find the consequent solution. But if it's a fixed point in time and it has to happen with Clara, like with the Doctor forgetting Clara and that happening, I feel also actually with Clara kind of going into the universe and being like, I can go and I can dabble around a bit in the universe and then I can go back to my point of death. If she dies before going back, then the universe is just like, and I find that incredibly selfish as well from Clara. Both Clara and the Doctor are incredibly selfish in this episode.
Could she die though?
Well, let me put Clara in some lava, melts. I don't really think I can put her back. They're like, she's not invincible. She's immortal. She is. Like, she can live forever, but she can be killed because she's still flesh and blood, because her brain's still functioning. There's I'm sure someone in the universe where there are Daleks and Cybermen, they could figure out how to kill her or at least incapacitate her, or you know what I mean? That would happen. So it's like, I find that very selfish that she's just leaving. And if something were to happen to her and she doesn't go back, what could happen? That would be that's when the huge consequence happens. That's the big thing. But let's say she goes out, she's fine, then she returns. That's the universe not combusting. It'd be fine. Then I agree with Aidan. You need the Doctor to just never remember her, because that's a consequence, and it's a consequence that's following the own rules of forget memory thing. I know the mind control one is the one where the brain will burn, but you could still carry that over to when you've forgotten, if you are not reminded, because then it could have like a neural block or whatever. But if you fully remember, I think there should be some sort of thing which kind of destroys those memories in your brain. So you could remember, for maybe if you want to push it, he could have that moment where he remembers her, but then he could never regain them ever. Like it's do you get what I'm saying? Like it's like you lose a Word document and you recover the past save. You can look at it one more time and then it blows up. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Strange analogy,
yes.
But I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I just think the never remembering thing should happen if you want at least a consequence, like one where she does go back and all that. But even then, I'd rather he doesn't even like. I don't, because then it's the idea that he's now moving on in his life without never remembering her. I'd rather he just went, "Hey, you're dead. I wanted to say goodbye," and now we both can just continue with our lives.
I think it, like, even though I really enjoyed the ending as it is, I think it would have been good if it was literally, as you said, just like the Doctor bringing Clara back, having that conversation in the cloisters and all, and then she returns there and then maybe.
What Aidan's saying here about the two endings for Clara's life, I do agree. It is, both endings are
fitting.
Yes, they are adequate because they both fit the idea that Clara's become too close to being the Doctor, and one instance is she dies because of it, one instance she has to basically be him. And I think I do agree with Aidan. I prefer the death thing because I like the Doctor being this
that nobody can replicate, really.
Exactly. The point is, I've said it before on the podcast, actually, we can think that we know how the Doctor will think, and really we can never really put ourselves in his shoes because he has been through so much and so many things that no other being can ever experience. He got, even in this episode, the 14 or 4 billion?
4.5
4.5 billion. So you got those 4.5 billion years, which basically no one else can experience. And then you've got him having to blow up his own planet, and then him losing his whole family. And then, just blowing up his own planet is already a thing which no one else does.
Imagine being told to blow up Earth. You'd be like, wait, what? Like, it's a big thing to do.
Yeah. And then, so you just got so many instances, and then losing his cloned daughter, which is that's when we're having already lost his family. The dude's been through so many things which no one else can experience. I feel like if you have someone else be them, they can't be the Doctor, because the Doctor is such a unique character. And I feel like I'd rather someone try and get so close to being the Doctor and they die, because it shows you that the Doctor survives and continues to be this hero because they are the Doctor, not because they go out and save the world. Because of everything they are is what makes them this person, and that's why they haven't died. And by saying Clara does die here, what it would do is it would say, yeah, no one else can be the Doctor.
I think I definitely agree with what you're saying, and I think it would have been a better ending to have Clara just be like, yeah, okay, I'm dead, I'll go. But please. I think a lot of it to me is just say with the Dr. Donna, how those things can't coexist. It's sort of this, that's the whole hybrid thing where it's the Doctor, and I know there's loads of theories and stuff, and I know
I do find the Dr. Donna more of the hybrid than anything this episode tries to tell me is the hybrid.
I'm sure there are a dozen things in Doctor Who that could be classed as more of a hybrid than the
there's
Doctor
probably one
existing.
every single series ever, isn't there?
but I think just them existing was as in the point of the hybrid, they've realized and acknowledged that their relationship is bad, so they've gone their separate ways, but they both still got sort of what they want. Clara always wanted to be
they both got a pretty sweet deal out of this.
I know,
they did,
but with no consequences, like you said. But
I mean, are there any other things that people think that kind of just doesn't make sense with this episode? Because I do think there's a few. Why are the Sisterhood of Khan kind of there?
I like how they just show
I'm not
up
complaining.
We're here.
I mean, yeah, I like them being there, but I'm sort of isn't there a rule that no non-Gallifreyans are allowed on Gallifrey? Why have they just wandered in? Why are you there? There is no reason for you to be there.
And then
really.
Rassilon, you'd expect Rassilon to just kick them out, and instead he's like, "You shouldn't be here." And they're like, "We are," and he's like, "Okay."
And also, why is Rassilon alive as well? Because there's.
I'm not complaining about that either.
Again, I'm not complaining because we're not in the Time War anymore. We don't need Rassilon. Haven't you got another? Unless they're thinking we're in a really desperate situation, we still need Rassilon. I can understand you, but I'm sort of could you not have gone? All right, we don't really need the Warmongerer Time Lord anymore. Shall we get somebody else? Romana's about. Shall we get her? No,
that would have been good.
Susan, she's somewhere. I still wish Susan came back or comes back. Come on, bring back Susan. But with Rassilon, it's such a shame to not Timothy Dalton, because
he was supposed to be in it, but he was for scheduling reasons.
Because with it being Rassilon, I didn't actually know it was Rassilon until I watched Hellbent with Aidan, and he told me that's Rassilon, because I didn't know. Because with the gauntlet, okay, that's what Rassilon's used, but it's not his skin. The dude could just drop that. It's kind of I never really latched onto me. I can never just kind of scream that this is Rassilon, but I do think
we have seen about 30 different Rassilons or something ridiculous.
Yeah, so I don't think I don't think, but the thing is with me, I hadn't, and I don't think maybe some people maybe I'm the only idiot out there who didn't know it was Rassilon, but I did once say to him, that's Rassilon. I was like, oh really?
They do say Rassilon at some point though. They do say.
I know, but I probably just zoned out at that point. But I do really like. He was good. He was good, but Timothy Dalton, I think, would have. I needed that rather than this old power figure. I think Rassilon had that kind of angry fire, which this guy kind of had, but I think I would have felt more intimidation from Timothy Dalton there because of the fact I'd seen him be this antagonist to the Doctor. Whereas this guy, I know he was that same character, but by not seeing it, it's not as impactful. But I'll let that slide for casting reasons. That's just something you can't deal with.
A Time Lord, so that they
yeah,
can change as many
just
times.
it's just something
you want.
which just happens. But when it comes to actually Rassilon being there and that whole confrontation, I do think is very obviously Rassilon probably shouldn't be there, but that whole confrontation is brilliant actually, and I find
that's when I really enjoy this episode.
I love this episode up until the
extraction chamber.
Yes, up until the extraction chamber. I think it's brilliant, and I think it's a very, very, very well done
return to Gallifrey. The first proper
because
time we've been on Gallifrey.
He's not showing up and he's not being explosions. I'm taking this back. He's showing up and being this stoic. You guys know who I am. Come to me, and that's such a power move, and and it shows you how fearsome the Doctor can be from the point of view of people who've seen what he can be. Because we know the Doctor, and we've seen him be scary, but we've also seen him be lovely and happy. But these guys have seen him in the Time War, where he was not at his worst, but like as in personality.
But isn't the Doctor anymore?
Yes, he was at his most warlike because he was the War Doctor, and they've seen that firsthand, and they've fought with him. So they've seen the horrors of war next to this guy, and they've seen how this guy can take on armies without a weapon. And that's such a brilliant thing, seeing their reaction and seeing how this guy's a war hero. We're not going to shoot him. And Rassilon's like, I just shoot him, come on. And they're like, no. And it's just such a brilliant moment, that, and him going back to the barn and him not saying a line until Rassilon shows up.
I love that. So like he doesn't say a word.
It's brilliant.
Until he says, like, get off my planet. And I think, doesn't Rassilon literally say words are his weapons, and he doesn't even say a word, so it just shows how incredible he is.
Yeah, I wrote the quote because I thought it was really nice. Like, kind of when you show the change in the Time Lords about how they've changed. The full quote was, like you said, words are his weapons, and then the general says, when did they stop being ours? And I love that line. It's like, because that's a really well written line. It's like,
and then again, that's saying, why the hell did you resurrect the guy who doesn't use words? Then if you think that.
Why resurrect the guy who literally has a killer glove? But anyway, he has an infinity glove.
Why don't you even give him his glove back? Just no glove this time. Rassilon, we're sick of your glove. You're just killing people with it. You killed Dave last week. Can you just stop?
But I do love that whole thing where he arrives on Gallifrey. I genuinely love that, and I can't think of a better, because this is the first proper time we see Gallifrey in New Who. I can't think of a better way to do that. I think that is for me perfect. Him arriving, not saying a word. You get the great parallel when he's walking towards the barn and he's carrying something over his shoulder, just like the War Doctor does in The Day of the Doctor. And then he gets there. And then I love the way, I've always loved when Time Lords look at each other and they recognize each other, even though they've regenerated. I love that. So when the woman, who some people have said, is that the Doctor's mom? Some people have said it's just the woman that you hear in Listen.
I don't think it is.
Unclear who.
I don't want to think it is the mum, because it's not nearly a big enough character. Like, I think his mum should be something much more substantial.
Like it's more like an aunt, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the woman from the End of Time is supposed to be the Doctor's mother.
Yeah.
So I don't know about this random woman in a barn. Yeah, I prefer that to just this random woman who's just like, they'll kill you, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's like all she does in the episode. So.
And to be fair, if it were his mum, I think there would have been less of a, they'll kill you, more of a, where the hell have you been?
Yeah.
It'd probably be that.
I think it's more like when you hear that voice in Listen, when it's like going, he doesn't want to go off to fight. I think it's her.
Probably.
If anything, because that's in the barn again, so it seems more likely to, be her.
The setup's really, like, they really, like, Stephen did a really good job of setting up this, like, it's basically a dictatorship that he's set, like, with Rassilon literally saying, do you know what I have it out here where there's no one who matters? Like, he's, like, perfectly defining, like, exactly. He's, like, setting up how Gallifrey is, and I feel like that should be developed more, that sort of side of Gallifrey. But
I feel like this episode, if I want to get rid of the whole extraction chamber bit, you could have it just this episode be purely focused on the Doctor reclaiming Gallifrey. And I think I would have loved that, and I think that probably would have been one of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever. Him having to, Rassilon not being defeated so easily, and him having to reclaim Gallifrey from tyranny. And using nothing but words. And I think an episode purely based around the fact that Doctor will not use violence on Gallifrey anymore would have been fascinating. But in this own episode, we see the Doctor use violence against a Time Lord, and it's like,
it's like he's unarmed. Words are his weapon. Bang, you're dead. It's like
it's such a turn. It makes me feel like this episode was written on 2 completely separate weeks. They'd written the first half, then they wrote the second half, because it's such a turn. Because you have this incredible philosophy, and you have them explaining the Doctor, and you have this in the first half. The second half happens, and it's going against every single thing they've said the Doctor is, and everything we've seen the Doctor be in this same episode, not just even in other ones, in this episode. And it just, I wish I got the episode I'm talking about now. I wish I got that, him reclaiming Gallifrey using nothing but words, and that would have been fascinating. And then they could have tried to reschedule it with Timothy Dalton. That would have been amazing. And I just think that I think that would have brought me back, but I think that would have brought a couple of people back from the Tennant era as well, because by making Rassilon the same actor, that would bring back a lot of people. And I think that would be, I know I keep falling back to the actor, and I do think, I don't know his name of the guy who did
Donald Sumter, isn't it?
But he did a brilliant job. Don't get me wrong. He was great. But I think there's just something more powerful about seeing that same guy with the same intonation and just that same complete personality of the guy we saw who was just an antagonist to New Who. I think seeing that person be defeated by the Doctor with nothing but words. I don't know why, but to me that would have been a bigger power moment, like a bigger hero moment, than him defeating a regeneration of him.
This is a quick question. Do you think there should have been a proper explanation as to where Rassilon's gone now? Because he just kind of flew off and that was it. Do you think there should be a conclusion
they did
to
say that they've just, that he won't find anywhere, and the Doctor, and he's saying how it's a bit, and the General was saying how it's a bit harsh. I love the General, actually. Brilliant.
Both versions, yeah.
No, the General 100%, like brilliant, because everything the General was saying, I was like, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter what situation they were in. It's brilliant.
That's what I love about the episode. Every single person, apart from the Doctor, is making sense. And that's just something that you've never really seen Doctor Who, and that's why I kind of like it so much.
Fair enough. You're wrong, but
I agree with George. This is something we never see because we shouldn't see it.
So just all in all, this episode, I think I like it. I like the one I've created in my own head. And I really like the first half of this because it shows me what this episode could have been.
I know you've been spending too much time with me if you're now preferring the version that lives in your head, the one that actually exists. All the Batman films you made me watch exist much better in here than they do actually on the disc.
And it just, for me, it just falls apart when the Doctor breaks his own rules, as everyone says in the episode. And I've said why. And if I start saying why again, I won't stop saying why.
We're going around in circles, yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I do really genuinely enjoy this episode for, I believe it's about 22 minutes. For that, when you were saying earlier, Daniel, about it being really well shot as well, everything on Gallifrey is just, I do think it is, I mean, everything on Gallifrey is in the surface of Gallifrey with the Gallifreyans. Also, do Gallifreyans regenerate? I had this little existential crisis with myself when I was watching this episode, because we know Time Lords can regenerate. But do Gallifreyans regenerate? Because Shobogans can't regenerate. Yeah. Time Lords can Gallifreyans? Anyway, that's a whole other debate. But
I think they say
I think it's just Time Lords. I think it is just.
Yeah,
Time
I don't
Lords.
think they can. So all those little peeps that are around the table, I don't think they can regenerate. But anyway, that was a whole.
It's because you're a Time Lord and a Gallifreyan. You're not one or the other. So I think
that's not the species.
You have to be a Time Lord to regenerate.
Yeah,
because you don't hear the Doctor ever just describe himself as a Gallifreyan. He's Gallifreyan and a Time Lord who can regenerate.
I know you guys are gonna have a go at me for this, but going off timeless children. No, I know it's not the best example to go off, but they say Shobogans grew in knowledge and ability and call themselves Time Lords. And in the context of it being a dictatorship, they probably would have kept the regenerative abilities to themselves.
I think you can.
So I think that'll be what it is.
You can get to that conclusion without the Timeless Child as well.
I was about to say, I think you can do that from other episodes as well. Because again, I'm referencing Tom Baker era a lot again today. But in the Invasion of Time, we see Shobogans as this kind of like these people that live on Gallifrey and they're not allowed in the Citadel and they don't like technology and they've all got spears and that kind of thing. And so that's why.
That's cool.
So that Leela, the companion, who's basically a savage, and she's always like, I'm just gonna stab people all the time. She's the most violent companion I've ever had. Anyway, she kind of really relates to those people. So I do think they can't regenerate because the Time Lords. My theory is that the Time Lords just went, "This is our power. All you lot out on the surface, you can't have it." And then also the soldiers, that because basically Time Lords are the highborn ones. They're the royalty, aren't they? Essentially. So I think that when the soldiers are enlisted or conscripted, they are given the ability to regenerate so that they can last longer in battle, because the amount of time war things we've seen or heard where a soldier's fighting and then they regenerate is a lot. And you think, but they wouldn't all be highborn nobility. There'd probably be a lot of those folk you see gather around that table. They go, come and fight for us. We'll give you the ability to regenerate, but you'll probably get killed anyway. So that's my theory. But anyway, that was a complete sidetrack that I just wondered about watching it. I think I wrote down, can they regenerate? But no, I do think that everything on the surface of Gallifrey is very, very strong, and I do really enjoy it. I'm fine with the extraction chamber if he's just saying goodbye because he didn't get the chance to. When he shoots the general, I just think it all goes downhill from there. There are moments when it goes up again, like when they're in the cloister room and they have that nice little conversation on the floor. I really like that. And then things just go back downhill again for me. And my relationship with this episode is that I see a lot of people calling it, well, until The Timeless Child, I saw a lot of people calling this the worst ever episode. And I disagree with
episode. Wow.
Yeah, the amount of people I've seen who say this is the worst ever episode because it just breaks too many rules and does too many things. I think no, it's not the worst, because although he breaks rules and he doesn't get consequences, some things, so when it things that pull it so far down, there are other things that pull it so far up. So it kind of balances out in the middle for me. So
it does make some terrible decisions, but it does do some great things as well. So it can't, in its entirety, be the worst episode.
The worst ever episode, and I don't even think it's the worst finale of New Who.
Oh no,
you know what I mean. I don't think it is as bad as people think it is to reference our series 1 form. I don't think it's as bad as it is. I do think it is great, but it's just one of those things. It's just like if you'd just done one scene differently, you could have fixed the episode for me. And it's just one of those things where I think because you did him shooting the general and then going too far to save Clara when he's never done that with any other companion who's died, that's when I think it's nice when he's acting out of character so far. Like when he changes out of his clothes because he says, I'm not being the Doctor right now. I like that. That's completely fine. That's completely fine with me. But going too far to threaten the state of the universe for one person is too far for me, and that's generally how I feel about this episode. Daniel.
I just think I completely understand your points, and you've enlightened me a lot to them, but in my mind I just like seeing the Doctor do that because it's a different thing for him to do. And although I do agree that it is somewhat out of character, in my head I contextualize it enough to make it believable. And I just think that because I don't see it as the Doctor going on a rampage. I just see it as more of a character moment or character episode focusing on how the Doctor and Clara just cannot be together anymore because their relationship is so toxic. And the whole thing with the hybrid and all that is just a metaphor to help us understand that. And I just think that's a very nuanced and subtle way to do that. Like instead of just like big explosions, Earth invasion finale, I really liked focusing on those two characters.
And that's the thing I've said I can appreciate from, I guess, what I've got from this discussion is that I can appreciate it as being this isn't something we see very often, so it's nice to see. Well, not nice to see, but interesting to see. I just don't want to see it. That's how I generally feel. So that's why I can appreciate it a bit more in hindsight than I did at the time. Is like okay, this is just this one-off thing. Like we said earlier, George had some connection issues, and we were saying that a lot of people see the hybrid arc as pointless, and I do kind of see it as it didn't really go anywhere. But that's because we're too used to the big Stephen Moffat storylines when it was cracking space and time. River Song is this, that. The universe of the state is at stake. Who is Clara? What's going on? There's these massive story arcs, and then this is one that is far more subtle. And it's just, here's the hybrid. What is the hybrid? We don't really know. We're not going to mention it again for 2 episodes. Oh, what's the hybrid? Oh, we don't really know. We're going to get to that, and then by the end, it's Lady Me or the Doctor. We still don't really know. It's still up for interpretation.
There's still, I think, because a lot of the prophecies
it is
and
just
stuff
Donna
being distracted by acknowledging his own toxicity. It's just like, oh, it's me. Oh, it could be Missy. Oh, da 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 da. But I think
it's with the TARDIS.
It's just like it's him ignoring his own issues and stuff, and that's how I interpreted it. Even though it was in my mind, it was sort of fulfilled, but people don't need to focus on that. They need to focus on the Doctor and Clara as characters. That's how I see it.
I think the thing with the hybrid as well is that I appreciate that about it being actually, it's just this thing about the Doctor is just, he's not acknowledging that his own faults, that kind of thing. I do like that. The thing that I kind of think does throw a spanner in the works slightly with that is like, why are the Time Lords so bothered to find out what it is then? Like, why now? Why have all their billions of years of history? Why are they suddenly like, guys, we need to focus on this hybrid. Throw the Doctor in a confession dial because we really need to find out what it is. Like, where did that sudden urge come from? That's something where I think, what a random thing for the Time Lords to do. Like that's just something I think.
I think that I think Stephen should have foreshadowed that maybe a bit more in like the series opener or something. Maybe done some, or even just in Hellbent, just like I threw in a line from the general or something.
Yeah,
to show what sparked it.
And when Missy first shows the confession dial to Clara, instead of being like the Doctor's going to die soon, you could have said something about the Time Lords trying to come back and they need the Doctor to do it. That's a bit more of something like, okay, so the Time Lords have a mission here, and I think that makes a bit more sense than suddenly just panicking over the hybrid out of nowhere.
When do we first hear about the Time Lords when it comes to do with the confession dial? Is it only in this episode when we have that proper connection between
Face the Raven,
the Time Lords?
Face the Raven, I believe.
Because because I'm just thinking, does by knowing Time Lords are heavily involved in this, take away from the kind of the shock factor that when he leaves the confession dial, he's on Gallifrey? Because the first time I saw that was quite wonderful, and I think
that's true. I think the surprise
by leaning into that too much, it may have taken that away.
But also, I don't know if that's the thing. I don't know if you want it to be a surprise, like, oh my god, we're back on Gallifrey, or if you want to all series be going, we're going back to Gallifrey.
Yeah,
because that feels like it builds it up a bit more. I'd maybe be like, oh, we're going back to Gallifrey. We're going back to Gallifrey. We're going back to Gallifrey. We're on Gallifrey. I think that might have been.
Yeah, in Heaven Sent, it was
more
like
interesting.
It was like we thought behind the diamond wall was the TARDIS, so at least that's what the Doctor said. So I do think it was a good twist to have, but again, I think it would have been good to properly contextualize why the Time Lords were scary. So scared of this hybrid character.
Thing is, that could have been contextualized in Hellbent. It doesn't have to be contextualized a couple of episodes before. It's just how would they do it, and they probably could do it.
So that's my general thoughts. Sometimes we try and give a 8 out of 10 rating. I don't know if I really can for this episode because it fluctuates, and I feel like the first 22 minutes would be like a solid 8 or 9 out of 10. Then the rest is like a 5. So I can't give it a rating because if it was a 2-parter, I could. But the fact it isn't, I'm like, I don't know. There are things I love, things I hate, and it's just this strange episode for me.
In total, I have to give it probably a 5 because it's if it leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth afterwards, it's kind of like I can't really enjoy it, and I don't want to rewatch it, and I will in a rewatch because of that first half, and that's what's really giving it 4 stars, and that 1 star is for the second half, so it's 5 stars for me. Out of 10, that is, not out of 5.
Yes.
Thank you.
For me, I don't know. Like, it's in my top 5 finales, maybe.
My God, what are your other top 5s?
Don't ask.
Kill the moon.
Oh, don't. Well, do you want me to go through the list of my top 5?
Quickly, go on.
Go for
God.
it.
We need context.
World Enough in Time is number 1.
right, fair enough.
The Doctor Falls, obviously.
Yes.
Stolen Earth, Journey's End.
Okay. I'm with you
Number
so
2.
far.
Brilliant.
I'm really scared for where this is going. Probably the series 3 and
Okay.
the 3-parter, whatever those episodes are called.
The master ones, basically.
And then
yeah.
I can't decide between Hellbent or the Big Bang. Is
Okay.
the
I'd
fourth
say go for
one
Big Bang then.
they switch around, because sometimes when I watch the Big Bang I'm like, but other times I watch it and I'm like, that was so cool, that was good. Like, so
I find with that.
I mean,
episode,
apart from Hellbent so far, you've been.
Yeah, I'm
This is
agreeing.
fine.
With so Big Bang for me, and that whenever I watch it, I go, my God, this is good. But then, like, if I've not seen it for like 6 months, I'll be like, that's not very good, that is it? It's not. And I'm
Yeah,
not.
it
When I haven't
fluctuates.
seen it, I think, oh, that's a bit boring. But okay, I'm with you so far. We're 4 out of 5 so far, and I'm with you.
and then and then either Hellbent or one like.
Oh,
Big
so that's
Bang or
just
something
4 or
else,
5.
but
Okay, so
yeah,
that's
it'll be
I
one of the
can-
2.
What I was expecting you to do there was go, well, number 1, Battle of Ranskoor of Collars. Number 2, Timeless Child. Number 3,
Timeless Children is probably number 6 actually.
Ugh.
Timeless, but
Number
like,
3, Wedding
that's
of River
just
Song.
me.
This is what I was expecting. So it's
Yeah.
not as bad as I thought it would be if I'm just taking the top 5. We won't talk about 6. So, yeah. Is it as bad as people think it is? No. Is it amazing and need a second chance though? Probably not. It's
Yeah.
just somewhere where it's like, it's not as bad as you think it is, but
Mhm.
don't rewatch it in a hurry. That's my general
Yeah.
feeling about
Okay.
it.
It's not the worst of the worst, but don't. Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
thinking, is it worth a rewatch?
Probably not.
It's low down. It's low down on my list of like
Probably
favorite
not if you don't
episodes of
think it's
series
good.
9,
Yeah.
but it's still good. Like I prefer Sleep No More, but that's more of a comment
Same, probably.
on my but I actually really like Sleep No More. Or most people hate it, but that's just me.
I'm not disagreeing with you here. It was I believe it was the 3rd episode we did of this podcast, Sleep No More.
Mhm.
I do quite like it. I do think it misses some things.
Hardly
And it's a bit of a
anyone
crap
does.
ending,
I wish people
but
did.
I do quite
Mhm.
like it.
It's
But
an
yeah,
interesting
that's-
concept, and it would have been a better 2-parter. But that's enough on Sleep No More.
Enough.
Yeah. But I think that wraps us up for Hellbent. I don't know what we're doing next week. It's our last guest special next week, but they've not decided on what the episode's going to be yet. So
Brilliant.
join
Please
us
don't be
then.
Classic Who.
I believe it is a Classic Who though. It might not be though, but it.
I don't hate Classic Who, but I've always preferred New Who. It's just how it is.
Yes. So join us then for a mystery episode,
Oh.
and goodbye.
Bye bye.